Hey, welcome back to another Netcast. I'm Rich Lopez, Quantrix Authority. Sincerely appreciate you joining me today for episode number 230, where I'm going to show you how to spread values across time. This is in response to a question sent to me at quantrixauthority@gmail.com. I absolutely love these types of questions because they truly demonstrate the power of Quantrix Modeler. This user has a very basic model, but he wants to do something very complex, and you are able to do that with Quantrix. They have a matrix here that lists a start date and a termination date, which is blank, for an expected salary. And they want to apply this by month between these start and end dates. And they want this to be applied by, the department that's listed here. And they want it to show up here in this average salary expense matrix that has years going across and months as well. So how do you do this using Quantrix? Well, this is a little bit complex, but it is absolutely awesome, and I hope you'll stick with me here. This may be a bit longer of a podcast than traditional, but I think it's going to be worth it to see how I would do this in Quantrix. First off, what I would do is I would go out and I would calculate the expected monthly salary. So I'm going to add another item here called expected monthly salary. And this one's going to be pretty easy in the fact that it's simply going to be the expected salary divided by 12. All right. And then what I would also put out here is, because I want to be looking at a department here compared to department S down here, they're not really one and the same. I'm simply going to go out and I'm going to pull in what department I'm on here. And how I'm going to do that, I think, is going to be, I'm going to call this department, then I'm going to say at level. And what is my category? It is department S, and my start level is 1. And you can see that when I do that, again, I go ahead and I get a department. And then I also want to have a termination date. Now, there's no termination date listed here, so I'm going to say that that's really till the end of time if it's left blank. Otherwise, we need to keep it. So over here, I would say termination date use. All right. And on termination date use, I'm going to say that if my termination date equals blank, then give me some high number. So like 12/31 of 2099, okay? So through the end of time, or a long time out in the distance, if you will. Otherwise, give me the termination date. So now I have a termination date that is uniform across all of these. So how then do I get this to show up into here based off of what I've just done? Well, there's one more step that I would do, and that is I would actually add another matrix here. And because this model that they have provided me does not have timeline, I have to kind of work around that. I would prefer that you always use timeline, but I'll show you how to do it when you're not using timeline in your development. I'd simply drag fiscal year up here to the top, and also month up here. I'd get rid of category B because it's not necessarily important. And let me drag month out to the side here. And I'm creating this kind of timeline helper, if you will. And within the timeline helper, I'm going to add an item that is just called the month helper here. Now, to populate month helper, what I need to do is I need to go ahead and insert the start date for this entire timeline matrix, if you will, and I'm just going to insert it manually and say it is 10/1 of 2017. And then what I want is I want to create a formula that will populate the rest of them. So I would then say that month helper is equal to month helper. I want to take an end date of this month and I want to add 1 to it to get the start date of the month I'm on. So I'm going to take EO month, and my start date is month helper of the month previous, and I want to take the end of the month previous, so that's why I'm putting 0 in here, and then I'm adding 1 just to get to the first of the next month. And you can see that works pretty good all the way out until this total, where this is incorrect. And this may calculate differently if I were to use timeline here instead of just basic categories. And if you watch episode 5, on Quantrix Authority. It's going to show you the beauties of timeline. So traditionally I would do it by timeline, but this user doesn't want to use timeline in their model. So you have to create a workaround here and have to say, well, this is not populating here in October. I need to go back actually 2 periods and get the correct date for that. So what we would do is I would say, well, month helper of the month first is equal to EO month of month helper month previous. Let me try this again. Previous minus 1, and I may need to tweak that a little bit, and then plus 1. And let's just try this. And I need to also say it's not of the month previous, it's of the last. I think it's of last here, and I also need to say year previous. Okay. And it's not called year, please bear with me. It's called fiscal year, FY. So when I do that, bam, it actually works. You can see that I get October here. So I may say here on this one, I may say skip total. And let's see what happens when that happens. So it's blank there. And yeah, I'm skipping total and I'm going 10-1. Now the beauty of Quantrix is it scales, because if I hit enter, it's going to populate FY19 exactly as well. So I just love that functionality about Quantrix. Completely enables scale right here, not having to copy any formulas over. All right, so still the same problem. What do we have to do though in order to get these values, this monthly salary, to populate within this matrix dependent upon this start date and this this termination date use, right? How do I do that? It's a select statement with flying keys. And if you watch episode 200 of Quantrix Authority, I introduced this concept to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new formula here, and I'm going to call it department. And what happens is department is equal to sum select. What do I want to select? I want to select the monthly salary that I have listed here. Okay, and I'm going to break this up. And what is my key list? Well, my key list is where I'm going to have my flying keys. And I'm going to say, well, my key list is up here in this matrix where my month helper is greater than or equal to my start date here. Okay. And so I'm going to hit an hashtag ampersand hashtag. It's not ampersand, it's just a hashtag there. I'm going to say, well, and also where this day is less than or equal to my termination date here. Okay, where those are equal, I want to, it's going to evaluate to ones and zeros, so I want them where they're evaluating to ones, and then I'm going to close out my sum here. But you can see that I've only established the dates. I also now need to establish a connection between the departments, so I'm going to then use a using this department as this department that's a category, so I got a using as in there. And let's see what's going on here. I've got a space between greater than and equals to. Now you can see that if I were to switch this to fiscal year 17, it is working beautifully in the fact that I have 3750 going on in 317 all the way through from 317 onward, and then once I get into February or March rather, then I pick up an additional $4,100, and that's showing up right here in March. As far as development goes, this department, I'm not seeing any action on it until I get into July or August rather of 2017, which would be, I guess, fiscal 2018 here. So I think that's an awesome example of how you use flying keys to spread values across months here in Quantrix. And again, you can watch episode 5, it explains timeline, and you can watch episode 200, which explores flying keys for you. And if you have any questions, I do hope that you'll reach out to me at quantrixauthority@gmail.com. I absolutely love Quantrix. I want to make you a Quantrix master. So please join me again for another episode of Quantrix Authority with Rich Lopez.